Sarah Polley's Women Talking is the current frontrunner to win the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay, and though I did like the film, I cannot possibly agree with awarding such an inept adaptation that misinterprets its own source material like a high schooler who's flunking English class. Did I mention I liked the movie? Let's check the screenplay's blunder, then we'll go through the other 4 nominees to see which is the worthy winner. By the way, spoilers for all 5 films. Women Talking, written by Sarah Polley.
So we must decide now to stay and fight or leave. Those are the options in front of us. We will not do nothing.
As you'd expect, this is a talky drama of ideas. Think of 12 Angry Men, but this time it's 8 angry women and 1 calm wimp. Women Talking is basically a series of discussions, and I quite enjoy the story's dialectical approach. How each argument is presented, elaborated, refuted, defended and concluded. How every subject is seen from every possible viewpoint.
Is forgiveness that's forced upon us true forgiveness?
How words have real weight and must be carefully chosen.
Greta's talking about leaving, not fleeing. The word fleeing wasn't what she meant.
And though the characters who are not played by super famous actresses tend to blend, the women of Rooney Mara, Claire Foy and Jessie Buckley have clearly opposing personalities.
A new religion taken from the old, but focused on love, would be created by the women of the colony.
I would rather stand my ground and shoot each man in the heart and bury him in a pit than flee. And I'll deal with God's wrath if I have to.
I dream that people who speak nonsense, who have no grasp on reality, are not put in charge of making statements.
Now here's something vital. They get harmless school teacher August to write the minutes because they can't read and write themselves. And a recurring criticism against this screenplay is that even though these women are all uneducated, each one of them speaks like a Supreme Court justice orating in the Stockholm Concert Hall. It's not a joke. They communicate through grammatically flawless articulate dissertations.
Please forgive my mother for using the wrong word. It's a sin so outrageous that Salome's taken it upon herself to rectify for the sake of all humanity.
We do know that the conditions have been created by men and that these attacks have been made possible because of the circumstances of the colony.
That all of us, men and women, are victims of the circumstances from which the colony has been created.
We do not need to be forgiven by the men of God for protecting our children from the depraved actions of vicious men who are often the very same men we're meant to ask for forgiveness.
And though they often disagree, they ultimately all sound alike, with the same vocabulary, constructions and phrasings. This fact becomes painfully clear whenever they agree on something. It sounds like when your class had to read a history chapter 1 sentence at a time.
It's the elders' quest for power that is responsible.
Because they needed to have those
They'd have power over.
And those people are us.
And they have taught the lesson of power to the boys and men of the colony.
Don't we all want some sort of power? This is very, very boring.
And this everyone sounds the same problem has a very obvious reason. It's embarrassing. Remember that August writes the minutes? Well, the original novel is that, the minutes. As if these women really had these meetings, and this guy really took these notes, and now you are reading them in book form. School teacher August paraphrased everything these women said. Most of the movie's dialogue comes directly from the novel. It means they are the words of educated and articulate note-taker August, not of the women who do the talking. The book has no quotation marks, and before you mention Saramago and such, remember that minutes are supposed to be paraphrased, not verbatim.
I will destroy any living thing that harms my child. I will tear it limb from limb. I will desecrate its body, and I will bury it alive.
That's why they all speak like they're in the Hague Conference. When writing a self-declared act of female imagination, Sarah Polley failed to notice that the characters in her source material had been intentionally filtered by a male voice. When it comes to reading comprehension, that's an F. Women Talking doesn't have one single woman talking.
Ironic.
Now we're through the depressing female story, let's get to the depressing male story. Our second most likely winner, All Quiet on the Western Front. Written by Edward Berger, Lesley Paterson and Ian Stokell.
Auf in den Kampf! Für Kaiser, Gott und Vaterland! Yeah!
2 hours later.
Should this adaptation of the classic World War I novel win? For one thing, the movie is far more encompassing than the book, that deals only with the first-person narrative of protagonist Paul. The film extends the story to epic proportions, showing the many different facets of war. It displays the luxurious quarters of chief officers to contrast with the filthy trenches of low-level soldiers. They go hungry and resort to stealing poultry from French farmers, while a French general scoffs at a croissant and a German general wastes food and wine. The script shows how the dead are counted and how their uniforms are collected, cleaned, resewn and given to fresh recruits. When Paul notices the name tag and the recruiter lies about it, we get this great symbolism. The screenplay does it quite well. When Paul finds Ludwig's broken glasses before finding his body, when the trench shakes to indicate the tanks arriving. What a brilliant idea it was to add tanks to the story. These steel monsters that would change warfare forever while soldiers were completely unprepared to defeat them, and the fear caused by flamethrowers. And the film's ending is perfect, much better than the novel. The disappointed German general orders an attack minutes before the war ends to stroke his own ego, and Paul dies in the very last seconds of the war. Terrific dramatic irony. I love it. Sorry, Paul. Speaking of Paul, the screenplay's problem is its characters. They all serve their functions to the plot very well, like the scarf that passes on from Franz to Tjaden to Paul to a recruit, and Kropp's poster that shows how useless was that trench Paul died for. But with the single exception of Kaczynski, who is interesting and touching, all characters are superficial and interchangeable. The poetic and opinionated Paul who narrates the novel is now your typical everyman protagonist, an empty shell meant to appeal to the wider possible audience. One could say that it's intentional, to show how he's just a normal boy like so many others who died for nothing. But as I always say, that's not a good intention. Glass Onion, written by Rian Johnson.
This kind of looks like that Clue notebook. Yes. You must be really great at Clue, huh?
I'm very bad at dumb things. My Achilles heel.
I like this film. It was great fun, but best screenplay is stretching it. Women Talking is about characters who should be idiots but are actually geniuses. Glass Onion is about characters who should be geniuses but are actually idiots, and that's much easier to do. Characters are too stupid and the screenplay relies on too many cliches to be award-worthy. Come on, an identical twin, a conveniently revealing and bullet-catching diary, eavesdropping character secret conversations. And there's no way that piece of paper would hold up in court. What is this? Scalability, exponential growth, diversification. A handful of stereotypical business buzzwords and arrows are enough to prove intellectual property. Like I can show a judge a napkin scribbled Pocahontas, Dances with Wolves, Smurfs and Space, and sue James Cameron for $1 billion. Glass Onion is what it wants to be and it's great at it. Perfectly unpretentious entertainment. But I can't take it seriously screenplay-wise. So let's talk about a film I can. Top Gun Maverick. Written by Christopher McQuarrie, Ehren Kruger and Eric Warren Singer. Story by Peter Craig and Justin Marks.
The end is inevitable, Maverick. Your kind is headed for extinction.
Maybe so, sir. But not today.
Many people cringed at this nomination, but it makes perfect sense. This movie is exactly what every screenwriting book and contest wants you to write. A likable protagonist, a palpable goal, a romantic subplot, a clear 3-act structure, and an inspiring conclusion. The screenplay could have just checked each box, but it checks them all with perfection. It's not a terribly original plot, but it works, and it sells. This is popcorn cinema of the highest quality. The screenplay is great at setting the stakes, at emphasizing how great these pilots are, so imagine how great is Maverick. At emphasizing how difficult their mission is gonna be, so imagine how exciting is gonna be the ending. This is what audiences want. A movie that makes big promises and delivers them. Maverick is a protagonist who is intelligent, mature, balanced, and manly. Wait, we can still have those? Give me more! And he still has an ineluctable tendency to break the rules to prove he can go beyond the limits. This is good character complexity. Other characters, though, are not that complex. and everyone goes through the exact same arc of earning each other's respect. The love interest is pretty empty, I must say. She's only there to have Maverick speak about Rooster. So is Iceman in his only scene, which, by every definition of the word, is a monologue. And the biggest problem with the screenplay is that annoying melodramatic insistence on Goose. Look, even if you felt guilty for his death, who mourns a friend for 36 years? It's just that type of useless backstory I can't stand that serves no purpose but manipulating the audience into getting emotionally involved.
Talk to me, Goose.
Ugh.
Talk to me, Goose.
Ugh. And Rooster based his whole life on emulating his dad who died when he was what, 4? The same profession and music taste down to the same trash stash? Amazing third act, by the way. It can even work as a short film by itself. Now let's talk about my favorite screenplay of the bunch. The one nobody saw. Living, written by Kazuo Ishiguro.
He was happy when you saw him. Perhaps as happy as he'd ever been in his entire life.
It follows the same structure as the original film, Kurosawa's Ikiru, with the first half being the protagonist searching for meaning by interacting with others, and the second half being after his death, when characters talk about him in flashbacks. Living uses the typical newcomer trope to introduce the audience to the movie's bureaucratic world. Through viewer surrogate wakeling, we are presented to the women's playground proposal and the endless red tape loop that keeps it stagnated, being part of it our protagonist himself.
Then we can keep it here for now. It'll do no harm.
Williams has a perfect character arc, from boring cog in a machine to satisfied savior of the community. Williams first tries to find meaning through drinking and skipping work before he realizes he can actually use his job for good. And it's excellent how this conclusion comes naturally through his interaction with Miss Harris.
And then I looked at you, and I remember what it was like to be alive like that.
She makes him think of youth, so hey, why not help the youth? A lot of pathos is given to a theoretically boring character.
What was it your name for me?
Mr. Zombie.
Now that's something hard to do. Notice how in the first half, when he's still in denial, he can't sing about his mother.
My mother, though I see her still.
Then, in the end, once he has moved to acceptance, he can sing calmly.
My mother, oh, I see her now. She smiles.
Who'd have thought Bill Nighy could sing?
Oh, Jesus, not that crap again!
This film is 20 years old. Too bad the film has no shot. Now, what do you think? Tell me in the comments which of these 5 films has your favorite screenplay. And if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.